Welcome back guys to another one of my theory videos and The Flash Season 4. Now I'm still kind of wondering if we're gonna be getting a fast track and Godspeed arc over the course of Season 4 of The Flash. But for the purpose of this video, and because we have no solid fact here, I'm gonna be assuming that it's most probably not gonna be the case. But this assumption as well actually tempts me to wonder why not just find a different way to pull Barry into the Speedforce at the end of Season 3. And that way, they could have basically saved the entire Speedforce Storm concept for usage with that specific arc later on. Unless, of course, they had a plan all along to use the Speedforce Storm for a different purpose. Now, I kind of got to thinking about a few things as of recently, and I tried to find an explainer for each and every one of them. Number one, we've got the symbols Barry was carving or drawing as soon as he came back from the Speedforce. The thing about those symbols, though, is they're tattooed right on Clifford DeVoe's face. But of course, the assumption that is just a tattoo is a bit out there. Number 2. Our episode 2 of Season 4, Villain of the Week, Kilgore. Now, he did not really get his powers back when the metahumans we've met so far did. You know, with the explosion of the particle accelerator. Number 3. No one ever discussed the aftermath of the Speedforce Storm. There is actually zero mention of it so far, even though we did see it wreaking havoc in the background as we watched the final scene of Season 3. Number 4. The Thinker was actually the one behind the Samuroids, and his objective seemed to clearly be getting the Flash back and out of the Speedforce. But finally, number 5. If the Thinker himself got his abilities with the particle accelerator explosion, where has he been over the course of these past 3 seasons? Now, before I try to connect the dots with theories and the like, let me remind you that I've got a $25 Amazon gift card giveaway running across all my DCTV videos. And all you've got to do to be eligible to win is be a subscriber and drop a relevant comment down below. I'll be announcing the winner on the first DCTV video that I upload on or after the 23rd of October. Alright, so let's circle back to all these points that I just mentioned and, like I stated, work on connecting the dots. Now, I know it looks like the Thinker is wearing what is or could be his thinking cap from the comics. But I personally think these are more of amplification devices that would sort of help him use his powers on a wider scale. Now, the main reason I'm saying this or thinking of it in this manner is because he was identified as a metahuman on the Flash panel at San Diego Comic-Con. So yes, chances are these are all amplification devices. So now that we've got this one settled, that means the Thinker has powers and he got them one way or the other. Now, the usual villain trope over the course of the past 3 seasons is pretty straightforward and pretty simple. With Eobard Thawne, or Fake Wells, it was him waiting for the moment that Barry Allen would grow up and get his speed, so he would become the villain of the first season. And looking at Hunter Zolomon, now he could not have been the villain of the first season because he could only cross over to Earth 1 after the singularity has been created. And as you all know, that wormhole was a direct product of the events of the Season 1 finale. Now, looking at Savitar, he only became the villain of Season 3 because he managed to find a loophole that would get him out of the Speedforce. And in a case similar to that at Zoom, the loophole was only a product of the events of the Season 2 finale and the Season 3 premiere, with Barry creating and then reversing Flashpoint. So there's basically kind of an extremely visible trend there. But major villains aside, and even with a rogue villain like the Mirror Master, they actually took the time out of the episode Scudder first appeared in to actually explain he was trapped in a mirror since he got his powers. Now, everything that I've just mentioned here with Zoom, Savitar, Thawne, and Sam Scudder would necessarily lead us to one conclusion. The major villain of the season, Clifford DeVoe. He needs to have a compelling background story that would explain why he's only a villain now, and not a season, or 2, or possibly 3 ago. I'll be circling back to this though once I've worked my way throughout the rest of the points I've raised earlier. Now, with regards to the tattooed symbols on DeVoe's face being pretty similar, if not actually the same, to the ones Barry was drawing right after he came out of the Speedforce, I can think of 2 possible explanations. 1, the symbols were pretty much carved into his face by the Speedforce. Or 2, they're actually tattooed there for one reason or the other, and the Speedforce just about taught Barry how to defeat the Thinker, and those symbols are the key. However though, and if we do combine this with DeVoe wanting to bring Barry back from the Speedforce, it is more probable these symbols were tattooed on his face by the Speedforce. But this would also allow for the possibility that Barry's knowledge that he gained from the Speedforce would allow him to unlock these symbols in a manner of speaking. So instead of the symbols being knowledge that Barry could defeat DeVoe with, it becomes a key that DeVoe could use for one thing or the other, possibly to unlock his very own ultimate set of powers. But this, however, does not necessarily mean that the symbols couldn't act as both. I mean, they could sort of be like a double-edged sword. Now, with a general outline being established here, let's build a theory. We know some people got powers, but not from the particle accelerator explosion. We know as well that some people were hit by the lightning from the Speedforce storm on the finale of Season 3. We also know that as a villain, the Thinker conveniently decides to show up on this season rather than a season or more ago. And accordingly, we've sort of established that unless this is backed up with some sort of explanation, it does not really make all that much sense. So I'm under the impression that the Thinker has only gotten his abilities as of recently, and hence why he never showed up on a previous season. I think as well that is why they are easing us into this sort of explanation with the conversation Barry had with Kilgore at the very end of episode 2. The question here, though, is about how and when the Thinker, Kilgore, and the others Kilgore mentioned in that conversation got their powers. What I'm thinking here is they were hit with the lightning from the Speedforce storm at the very end of the 3rd season. That would as well make the Thinker into the Godspeed I may have expected out of this arc, only with high brain functionality and no speed. When you actually kind of think about it, there are so many other things that actually make such a possibility more plausible. Number 1, there are the symbols on the Thinker's face, which in a way go to prove he has some sort of Speedforce connection. This connection would as well explain how the Thinker, through the Samuroid, realized Wally wasn't the actual Flash, even though he was all suited up in red. Number 2, his eagerness to get Barry out of the Speedforce, evident by the events of the premiere, are probably all about unlocking the meaning of these symbols and his ultimate powers as a product. Number 3, that is a very good explainer as to why no one on the show ever discussed the repercussions or victims of the lightning from the Speedforce storm, and it would be simply because there were no victims but just newly created metahumans. Number 4, that would as well make for a good explainer for why we're only seeing the Thinker now and not as early as seasons 1, 2, or 3. To sum up all of this though, my theory is Clifford DeVoe got his powers as a product of being hit by the lightning from the Speedforce storm. And along with those powers, he also got those symbols that are seemingly tattooed on his face. It basically took him the 6 months that Barry was in the Speedforce to start up shop. He then decided it was about time he pushed Team Flash into bringing Barry out of the Speedforce, which they did. But at this moment, and at the hope of getting more powerful, he's gonna be working on using the knowledge that Barry gained from the Speedforce to unlock the meaning of those symbols. However though, these symbols are going to be some sort of a double-edged sword. The Speedforce did not just bestow this knowledge upon the Flash so he could help a villain gain control. So what I'm saying here is I'm guessing these symbols have two uses, one that would help the Thinker become more powerful, and one that could help Barry defeat the Thinker. Now I know one of the comments that I might get here is about the character description released while the show was casting an actor in the role of the Thinker. That character description did actually state he became a metahuman at the time of the particle accelerator explosion, but there are just two things that you need to consider here. Number 1, we are yet to hear of or watch an origin story for the Thinker. And of course, given this description was part of the casting call sheet for the role of the Thinker, they have not filmed any scenes with the character when it was released. Number 2, these things change. That is simply what it is, a casting description. The writing for the portion of the season that would define how the Thinker got his powers might not have even been done at the time. So please, just take all of that into consideration before you decide to argue with such a comment. And hopefully, on my end, I've covered all my bases here. But that's all I've got for now on this topic. So remember, it's just a theory. We're all in some sort of unexplored territory here. It is just like the Arrowverse is becoming its very own comic book reboot. But with all of that being said, let me know in the comments what your very own thoughts on the topic happen to be. How do you think the Thinker got his powers? Do let me know as well if you like the content of this video by slapping it a much appreciated like. And of course, while you're at it, you can always subscribe and enable notifications for my future videos. But until I see you next time, thank you all for watching and have a good one.